Oh boy, with so many things to talk about today, things just have to end as a mess. And just so you actually know, I wanted to do a video like I'm doing today for more than a year already, because I was patiently waiting for things to change for a better. And it didn't happen. I waited and waited, and at some point I just had to admit to myself it's not worth it anymore, and to annoy myself for the whole thing. But what's the whole thing? So let's talk about Huawei today here. I actually made some notes. I want to check off some things and talk about it. And this is the thing that you just have to listen for a second. If you really care to understand me of why I think about Huawei the way I think about it and everything around it, then with an open mind, watch what I'm gonna have to say. And you don't have to agree with me, but you have to accept my opinion. Otherwise, it's pointless. But if you just disagree with me for the reason of disagreeing because you like the brand and everything what I say is just bashing it, that's not the point. Because if I actually start at the beginning, which was 2016, when everything was still great, I was pretty much the biggest Huawei fanboy reviewer of all times. Not that I was a fanboy, but I was called this already so many times when I especially released my review for the Huawei P9 Lite, which was at the time a really great phone, and I recommended it more than any other phone since then. And then everything was great. There were a lot of great phones out there, the P9, the Mate 8, and all these kind of things. So why did things change? And why do I think now different about this company? Let me actually tell how I think about it. Because usually whenever someone asks me which brand is the best, is it Samsung, is it Nokia, is it Sony, is it whatever else, I always say I don't care about brands. All I review are products. And I only care for good or bad products, whatever it is. But I don't really care from which brand it is. That has no matter for me. But Huawei has managed to do something that no other brand, as bad as possible as their products have been, they got me to hate them. Now, why do I hate Huawei by now? Now, for you to get the whole picture, you just have to watch this video. Let me explain it. And yes, it is from a very subjective standpoint, but that is my opinion. And maybe after you watch this video, and if you understand how I think and how I review stuff, you will maybe get it as well. But I also want to talk about the toxic things about YouTube revolving around Huawei and everything else. So maybe it's interesting for you who maybe don't even care about my opinion, but just want to know what I think about the whole thing around it. So let's start with the past. 2016, I said it already, the P9 Lite was a great phone. The P9 was a really good phone. And I think the Mate 8 came out at that point, was also a great phone. So all of these got great reviews. So what changed in 2017? Well, it started all with the Huawei P8 Lite 2017, which was just not a good phone. And I don't really mean bad, but for its price, what it offered, with the issues it had, it wasn't a phone that I could recommend. And I was back then very harsh, and I said actually don't buy it. I got so much hate for it, where the whole thing already started, because this is where I actually noticed for the first time of how terrible Huawei fanboys can be. Because when I praised their devices because they were good, everyone was super happy, and so many people told me that you're the best reviewer, thanks to you I bought it, I'm super happy with it. And all of a sudden, me as a reviewer, my opinion was wrong. I was a bad reviewer, I should stop reviewing Huawei phones, which I was told about other brands as well. But the thing is, why did I start YouTube? Why did I start making reviews? For me, the whole purpose was that I wasn't really happy with what I saw out there. Not because I make better reviews, because I just think I didn't see the type of review that I would have personally liked to have seen, which is a very still objective review, but with some subjective aspects of how a reviewer sees the phone, because there are so many objective reviewers who just read down their script, but you don't really know how they really feel about this phone, because that's something that anyone else could have written. But if you see me making a review, so many people told me that whatever I say, you can already on my face see how I think about the phone. And I was never shy to show this. So if I don't like something, I will tell it like it is, because the thing for me is always, that's the most important part. I don't make reviews for you to feel better about your purchase. I make this for those people who are thinking about if they should buy this phone or maybe something else, if they maybe are better off if they get something else. And the issue is though that a big percentage of all the viewers are just watching reviews after they bought the device to kind of confirm that they made a great choice. But if you watch my videos, my reviews for that purpose, you definitely won't get what you want. You will definitely get exactly the opposite. You will get pissed. And that's why from only users of or owners of these phones that I don't give a good review, I get so much hate. Just today I was told I'm a bad reviewer, I should stop reviewing. I reviewed it wrong. This was a wrong review. The device is great. Well, here's the thing. I have experience for about 5 years already as a reviewer, and I've reviewed over 250 phones by now. I've reviewed all recent phones. I know the competition. I know what's available at which price range and which strengths and weaknesses, which those people don't have. But I'll go a little bit later into that, because 2017 is the important part. 2017 with that phone, it already started to show that they kind of lost their edge. It's not a light phone, what it was usually a good phone. It was something noticeably weaker. And I thought, okay, that's the budget phone. Let's see what they deliver with the P10. And the P10, what did they have with it? The performance was actually good, and the whole device overall was nice, but it still had some issues. It still wasn't on par with, at that time, flagship in terms of performance. It wasn't quite there, but it was very close, so that was not the issue. But the dimming. This is where my main hate about Huawei started to boil up in me, because the screen dimming was a thing that I already way more over a year already complained about on Huawei and Honor phones. I've messaged Honor, they told me what are you talking about, we have no idea. I made them a specific video, one that I didn't even release, to show them what I mean by the screen dimming. They told, yeah, we will give it to them and we will see what they can do. I did the same for Huawei, and I asked them twice why that is a thing. And I never really got a proper answer. But what I got from a lot of comments is people told me, no, wait, they already know about this and they will fix it ASAP and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But as far as I know, and I've checked back with those people and I've checked everywhere else, and when I did my revisit reviews, nothing ever happened. And just for example, it was, I think, 2 days ago, someone told me that the Huawei Mate 10 Pro got an update that fixed the issue. And I still don't believe that until I see it, because from 3 YouTubers that I know, that I absolutely can trust on their opinion, I asked them, does the P20 Pro have the screen dimming as well? And they all checked the way I wanted it to be checked, and they said me no. So this just shows me that even people who are specifically asked to check for one specific thing most often don't even see the thing. And this is where the whole subjective thing starts. For me, as a reviewer, where I think my method of reviewing, especially the battery life and the whole experience, is very consistent. Because I review every phone with the same brightness throughout fixed, just so I can take out one of the possible or factors, so I don't have to think about it. Because if I would use one device at auto brightness, and it's sunny all the time, the display will be bright very much all the time, and it will drain a lot more than, for example, if I review a phone in the winter when it's very dark, or if I maybe have the night shift and it's dark outside, and wherever I am it's dark and the phone is very dim. And then it gets great battery life. So I tried, because this is the battery life, after all, is the biggest factor that you can evaluate in terms of the battery life. So I try to take that out, because if a reviewer, and I don't think there is anyone besides those standardized tests who has these kind of consistent values that I have, because I by now know with my use, which is pretty much always the same, because I also try to keep that as consistent as possible, with the brightness as consistent as possible, with the same apps every time, that I can pretty much right now, you tell me a device, its screen size, its processor, the UI usually, that's not a big factor, and some other things, the battery size and so on, and I can pretty much exactly almost to like not maybe 5 minutes, but to half an hour correctly, I can tell you which kind of battery life you will get. And I get this proven every time and time again. Absolutely. I check myself if what I at first think actually holds up, and so far it ever did. So the screen dimming, this is something that personally bugs me a lot. And for those people who don't know what screen dimming is, well, it's a thing that they introduced already very early on. I'm not quite sure which was the first phone that I had it with, but you set auto brightness to off. You disable it, which means you should have a manual brightness. And yet the phone does not do that. Because if you're in the launcher, it's okay. If you then go, for example, to Chrome, Docs, YouTube, and things have changed over the past. Back then it was just, for example, Chrome and Docs. Now it's also YouTube, sometimes Instagram, and sometimes things can even evolve. So it changes, but the brightness does not stay the same. It usually dims by about 10-20%. It's always a little bit of a fluctuating thing on every phone and such, which is always actually the weird thing, because the P10 introduced a different dimming than all other phones had before, which is the same that the Mate 10 Pro has, which is the same that the P20 Pro has, which is different compared to what, for example, the Honor 6X had or something like that, but that doesn't really matter. But this is annoying because it takes away my consistency. It takes away from the experience, because if I want a little bit of a brighter display, which actually isn't all that bright, because I usually stick with around 200 lux, and it dims down by 20%, the screen gets dull. So the display of the P10 was a super nice, it was an amazing screen, but it was a very nice screen, but with the dimming it just looked dull and lifeless. Same on the Mate 10 Pro, really nice display, but they kind of dulled it down, and once again for the P10. So they kind of limit my experience that I want to have in a way that's just not acceptable, because you can set this extra setting and tell me, if you don't want this, we can change it a few things to preserve better. That is all fine. But if I set manual brightness, I want the brightness to be manual. Now, obviously, everyone who uses auto brightness anyways, which I just don't like, not just because for the consistency reasons, but just because in general, then it does not bother you at all. But this is not the problem, because I had this discussion with another YouTuber and he told me, you are looking at a very specific problem that only you seem to have. I have not heard about anywhere else before, and before you I've never heard it. And I said to him, just because I have this issue, which is a thing, and you haven't heard of it, doesn't make it any better. And then I said, I know of enough users who said it's a deal breaker because they complained about it. And he once again said, but that's a minor thing, so why really bother? It's not the thing that those people are a minority and you should ignore them. It's the fact that Huawei knows about it and that it's just not okay. And just because you are not impacted by it does not mean it's okay. Because so many times I've heard it will get fixed and it just doesn't happen. And why does it actually happen in the first place, I ask you? Because it is not an Android inbuilt feature. It is something that they specifically have designed, in my opinion, to preserve battery life. So just take that out, because they always say, oh, it's a bug, we'll fix it. But it's not a bug if you actually created that feature. Take out the code of this bug and then we are good to go. Which just leads me to the point, they are unwilling to change. For example, they switched from EMUI 5 to EMUI 8. What did really happen? Nothing. The same UI look, which is okay for me because I like their themes and you can adjust things a lot. And this is very nice. But in terms of underlying system, actually things got worse because their optimization on all their Oreo phones is really, really terrible. And for some reason, even Honor, their daughter brand, makes it better than they do. And I still think that the chip has potential. And this is where people don't understand me. I tell them the 970 has potential, but it's not even used up to maybe like 60% because it is a fact. I know this from YouTubers that I trust who can see the performance differences. The performance is not on the level of what an 835 or what an 845 can do, not even close in my opinion as a general experience base. Because you can tell me whatever you want in terms of benchmarks where they say, but it's better here. It doesn't matter. After all, you don't use a benchmark to tweet. You don't use a benchmark to make your Instagram photos or scroll through your browser. That's real life use. And that's why I don't consider benchmarks as a thing at all. So the main two things that bother me about them, or actually with the main premise of unwilling to change. They don't fix the issue, they don't get rid of the screen dimming. And it doesn't matter if that's something that you care about or not. And then there is the performance with a few minor issues that I don't really want to get into now, not to make the video explode. But the next point is they started with 2017 a little bit already, but even more so. Most obviously visible with the Mate 10, but even more so with the P20 Pro. They designed their phones with the marketing in mind, especially with reviewers and what they will tell you. Because if you just look at the specs on this phone, the bare specs, it looks like a top phone. Maybe not an amazing phone because we don't have features like an SD card on the big ones. We don't have, on the P20 for example, waterproofing. We don't have wireless charging. We don't have a QHD display. But what they do, they did heavily force the marketing around one major thing. And well, which thing is that? It's the one thing that every reviewer, pretty much every reviewer, puts most emphasis on. The fucking camera. And I know, just because I'm not super into cameras on phones, because I still think, because everyone says the best camera is that one that you have on you. But for example, I have an action camera right now in review. It's a small, tiny camera. But you wouldn't believe of how much better video is. Because tell me what you want. Yes, I totally agree with you. Pictures, so photos on cameras have become so good that the, I would say, beginner, someone who's not into photography that much, wouldn't actually notice maybe a great difference between a 3,000 euro mirrorless cam and, for example, a photo cam, because they kind of tweak a lot more. But video is still a huge difference. Video is where a small tiny action cam blows away everything. And I noticed this side by side when I did my testing 2 or 3 days ago, and also did a few videos with the action cam, and it looked like a completely different level. So they only put emphasis on the pictures. Why? Because social media is so big, which actually is counterintuitive, because usually most of these reviewers, they post and they plaster their pictures with the hashtag P20 Pro, which is something that was so annoying for me, around Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. But all those services compress the video anyways. And if you wouldn't tell people what it is, you could fool them so easily. You could just, for example, 5 days post only P20 pictures with the hashtag P20. And if you just leave the P20 Pro, the hashtag away, and make a photo with a $200 cam, people, I can tell you, people would not even notice the difference, and they would say, wow, what an amazing picture. And why can I say this so confidently? Because I've seen this happen. I actually saw a few people who did these tests who specifically didn't tell which device it is. And for example, I saw a video where someone shot a video and he didn't say which device it was, but people knew what kind of devices he reviewed, and they all went for, oh, that's this flagship, that's this flagship, that's this flagship, and at the end it was a $200 Chinese phone, and people did not know the difference. And this is the exact same thing. But if you heavily market a feature, like for example the night mode, which is an absolutely nice feature, but this is something that you will use at the beginning during your review period a lot, and it is an absolutely great feature, don't get me wrong. That was the most spectacular feature on this phone. But how often will you have the chance to make a picture at night with a 4-second waiting time? Usually you don't have that, especially if it's a moving picture, you don't have the chance anyways. So it's a very limited thing, but a thing that they excel in. That's why they get praise. They also kind of got the DxOMark score, which is insanely high. And yes, the camera might be the best out there at the moment for photos in general. But I don't think that it's that much better that people almost jerked off about it so extremely with the hashtag and everything else. So designing your phone with the reviewer in mind, in my opinion, is wrong, because many reviewers, they emphasize on a few things that you have them impressed with, but they're okay if you slack a few other things for that and if you skimp out on that. That's something that is not okay, because I personally way more the balance. So next thing, giving it away for everyone for free, to everyone for free. So this is a thing. As you know, and of course some other brands do this as well, but not as dominant, not as prominent like Huawei does. For example, they invite pretty much everyone, and I've seen really small channels already, and Honor invites even smaller channels, gets them to their events, hands them a device, usually pretty much the best one, because in this case it was the P20 Pro, because they wanted to heavily market that. They give it a one to free, and let's just think about this. This for them is the cheapest kind of guerrilla marketing you can do. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but I just want you to understand the whole thing behind it. Now, let's think about it. They pay, let's say, a $900 Huawei P20 Pro. Since they are the company that gives them away, it's way cheaper for them. So let's just say even it's not that much, $500, $600. So you pay that to every single reviewer. Now think about what it would cost for some of these big reviewers for you to make an advertisement, because that would be so much more important. Because what you actually get for this one phone that you get for free, you get a hands-on video, you get an unboxing video, maybe you get a camera review, you get a review, you maybe get an afterwards video, you get a ton of Instagram pictures, you get a ton of Twitter pictures, and all of that is free advertisement from them. And not that there's anything wrong with them, but it's this kind of guerrilla marketing, because when the P20 was given out to everyone, my whole Instagram and Twitter feed was flooded with people with the hashtag. It was give me more at some point or something like that, and then P20 Pro, and I couldn't even see this anymore, because make the photo. If it's a great photo, make the photo. You don't need to put the hashtag behind it. And when I asked someone why he did it, he said, yes, people always ask me, what is it? It's not as common, because if you put P20 Pro in the hashtag, of 100 viewers who watch the picture, 100 viewers will know what it is. But those people who would actually ask, hey, which cam did you do that with, is maybe like 5. So you definitely expand it. And obviously this is not something coming from Huawei, but they are definitely working with that in mind, that they get so much out of it. And after all, what a reviewer says, because the big ones are influencers, what they tell and if you, for example, as a just tech enthusiast, or even if a normal person, just follow some certain people and you always see the same phones popping up, what's the first thing that will come into your mind when you want to buy one? If it's good or not, that's not even the question. Now the next thing, pay for everything and travel. Now, here's the thing, for example, I know a German YouTuber, and he kind of got called out so many times already as a shill. He got paid off by Huawei and so on. And there was a little bit bigger YouTuber who actually did a video, but for example, for one reason, he didn't make it on YouTube itself, but he just posted it on Twitter. I'm not quite sure, maybe he was afraid for some people to have it more public, because on Twitter it's still not quite the same. And he explained that all the phones that he gets for free he keeps, and he doesn't really make much money, because what those people always tell him, you get paid off. You get paid for the travel, you get paid for the hotel, for the stay, nice fancy dinner, and you get the phone for free. Now, I personally have nothing against it. That's actually okay. Why? Because just think about it. If they want you to promote their phone in some way, even though maybe not directly, and make a lot of advertisement for it, also not directly, I think they should pay for your travel, because travel expenses are high, especially if you do this for a living. You can't just pay 500 euros or maybe 600 euros to go to that event. And if you, for example, the big ones have to travel over the big pond one way or the other to get to an event, that's just not feasible. So I'm okay with them then paying that. But what you should also do as an objective, as an independent reviewer, you should never go too close to a brand, because that is something that I strictly wanna always stay away from, because I've had a lot of contacts from different brands that were super nice, and if they are nice to me, I am nice to them, but it always stays strictly on a professional level. What I would never really do is I don't want to meet them usually in person, or if I'm just talking on a professional way what I want to know about the rest. But I've seen reviewers who are very personal, very close to them, have a good relationship, kind of wish them the best for their birthday, and kind of know a lot of them. But once you get a little bit too close, it will, and I'm absolutely sure it will cloud your judgment. It's just not unavoidable, at least not for everyone. A lot of people, if, for example, you get stuff for free all the time, if they pay for your expenses, if they are super nice to you, it's just in your subconscious, and that's something very important to keep in mind. It's something that they are most often not even fully aware of in their subconscious. They will think, okay, maybe I'll leave this bad thing out, this bad thing is because they mean well, and that's not something I can blame them for. And that's why I don't want to get into a kind of friendshiply relationship with anyone. I like them because they are nice to me, if they are nice to me, but that's where the line stops. And this is a line that so many reviewers cross, because especially, for example, and I've seen another YouTuber talking about that, if a big company like LG, for example, if you test their ultra wides all the time, gives you a cake with you on top and everything else, how independent are you? And so many promotions and sponsors, and that's not a thing. But you really have to know what you are getting into, is because you will get influenced. And that leads me to the next thing. Can you trust these reviewers, their mission? Now, here's the thing. Now, personally, definitely, my mission is a different one to anyone else, especially if you are someone who does it on a... that is always a little bit something that you just have to keep in mind. If you do this for a living, you have to just see things different. And I'm just gonna say this, I wholeheartedly believe this, that the best possible independent reviewer who doesn't really do this for a living, or who just doesn't have to do it for his living already because he makes so much money, and that's where I actually give more trust into some bigger ones, at least possibly. At least there is the potential for that compared to the smaller ones that have to live off it. Because, just think about it. How do you grow big on YouTube? You don't do it like I do. And that's the reason why after 5 years of YouTube, I'm so small. You are not too critical. You always try, and I've said this already once before, you try to stay within the lines. You always try to be in the middle and not to edge on one or the other side. So you don't try to be too positive to look as a kind of paid off guy, and you don't try to be too negative because then you get in action or in trouble with the fanboys. But if you want to be successful, you have to keep that line, which means you can never 100% be honest and you can never 100% be super positive about something. So, of course, that's a good thing because you shouldn't show too much of if you prefer a brand or not, which I have to say, if you look closely, if you read between the lines, there are so many reviewers, especially the ones in the US, that favor Samsung phones. Because if you watch their podcasts, they can review this phone and this phone and this phone. But I can tell you for 100% sureness, they use a Galaxy Note, they use the Galaxy Samsung S9 or something like that, and nothing ever has a chance to get close to this, because there will never ever be 100% objective because they have such a big favor on something. For me, for example, I change my brand or the phone that I have every time, because not every year this brand is always the best, and I'm not gonna be loyal to any brands. For example, let's just start with the Sony Xperia Z3, because that's pretty much the first thing when I started reviewing. I had the Z3 for 1.5 years because at that point it was just the best phone that came out there. The next time when I had to switch, it was the S7 and not a Sony phone anymore, because Sony at that time just wasn't that good. And now here's what shows me that something is just wrong when it comes to YouTube land. Back when I had the Z3, I was a Sony shill and I was a Samsung, back then in the time, a Samsung Galaxy S6 hater. When, though, I switched from the Z3 to the Samsung Galaxy S7 and then made a comparison with the Sony phone, now all of a sudden I was a Samsung shill and I was a Sony hater. And since that point I kept this kind of the name that I'm a Sony hater. So the same thing now happens with Huawei. Back in 2016, when I gave praise to them, I was a Huawei fanboy. Now in 2017, when it started with going downways, in my opinion, down the toilet with them, I was a Huawei hater. And so many times that I actually was told from a few people already that I should stop reviewing Huawei phones because I'm biased and everything else. But I wasn't. Because if I make my reviews, for the whole premise why I started is to inform people on an objective but also subjective way to let people know if a phone is good or not. And it doesn't matter to me, even if I maybe aren't particularly fond of the brand like by now, I still can make a mostly objective review. And I think it quite well with the Huawei P20 Pro in my opinion, because I strictly separated both things. The whole detailed part was as objective as possible. The rating especially, because at the rating I don't even look at what kind of brand it is. I just look at every single category, what kind of quality I have here. That's not even something that I put my experience into it. That would be a different thing. But when I made the conclusion, I specifically said, let's put everything I said now in the background and let me talk about my experience, my personal subjective opinion. And then things are completely different way. So how, if not unbiased, or how, if I'm not objective, could I do that? How can I say all the good stuff with the negative stuff in one part, but only the bad stuff as a final conclusion? For example, if I said it objectively, it's a really nice phone and I can recommend it and everything else. But then I said, if you ask me personally, if you want my opinion, this phone, no. So how does this make sense if I couldn't separate these two things? But people can't seem to understand this, which brings me actually back to those fanboys. Because I, for a long time, thought Sony fanboys were the worst. And this is just a general tech thing. Tech viewers, especially fanboys, are absolutely toxic, because all what they want is stuff for free, and they expect you to do everything they want you to do it the way they want to see it. And if you don't do it, then you are the bad one. If you disagree with their opinion, you are wrong. It's not that they could be possibly wrong or something like that, because after all, they own the device, which already makes them a little bit biased on a way for them. The thing is, just someone just today told me, when I reviewed the Huawei P20 Lite, I said it's not a good phone, it just doesn't perform well. What? Now, let's guess. What do all the Huawei P20 Lite owners tell me in their comments? They tell me my device is either broken, it's not good, or it's just faulty, or my device runs great, I'm super happy with it, it's smooth. Okay, here's where the experience comes back. I have reviewed 250 phones. I have reviewed all current ones. I know everything around it. I know all the competitors in that price range. I know which one has which strengths and weaknesses. So if I tell this phone is not good in terms of performance, it's not bad, but it's worse than the competition. And if they, for example, only have this one phone and previously also a Huawei phone, which is most often the case, and that was also not already good, so how can they actually know what is possible? For example, today I saw someone in a comment telling me, how could I tell this phone is bad, blah, blah, blah. And I told him, yes, I know the competition in it. And he said, I have a Galaxy Note 8 and I have a Huawei P20 Lite. And there's pretty much no difference besides the S Pen. First of all, my mind was blown, because if you don't see a difference between a Note 8, which obviously doesn't run perfect, not as good as the S9, but runs after all on a last year's flagship level, compared to a phone that doesn't run even well on a budget level in 2018. Now obviously he said that the battery life is way better on the P20 Lite, which is also already the next thing. The Huawei P20 Lite has good battery life, but it's decent compared to what else is available. There are so many phones right now out there that can deliver the same or even way better. So even that department, it's not particularly good. But they don't know that because they have not reviewed all the other phones that are just better. If you review 2 crappy products and get a decent one, you think it's great, but you didn't review the 5 better ones and then see what's possible. So yeah, what else is there to say? Yeah, like I said, why do people who buy a phone watch reviews afterwards? Just because they are watching for justifying their purchase. But that's not what my channel is there for. If you want my opinion, you have to get it beforehand, because I make reviews to inform people if they should get this phone, or maybe if it's smarter, or maybe if it's smarter to just go for something else, or maybe if you can get something that's better suited for you, that's better value for you, or anything like that. But no, that's not always possible. I mean, I don't do it to make you feel good. You can go to other channels if you want justification for your great phone. But no, actually, I can't understand this. Why you would do this? Why? If you got the phone and you're happy with it, why would you risk it to hear something about it you disagree anyways, or you just don't like? And if you don't like it, you will disagree. Believe me, that's the case. Okay, this video is getting quite long. What next? I've talked about this, yeah. The whole thing that I talked about, my whole reason, and I hope you kind of got where it's coming from. It's their guerrilla tactics, it's their marketing, it's their unwillingness to change, it's their phones that actually get designed to just impress reviewers, but don't really fully convince anymore, because they have a lot of smaller flaws. And they also, for example, I didn't even get into the part that they release like 5 phones with 1 chipset. Because, for example, what does Huawei have at the moment? They have a Kirin 659 and they have the Kirin 970. And these 2 chips, they push into like 15 devices. And if we consider maybe even Honor as well, it's even more so. So that's just wrong. If you can produce 5 or 6 chips that you could individually use in those classes, then don't make 10 phones. Make 1 budget chip for the budget and mid-range phones and make 1 for the flagships. But why would you put a Kirin 659 into 5 phones that all the as a difference has maybe a 0.1 inch bigger display, 0.2 inch bigger display, slightly different camera configuration. Now instead of 16:9, it's a 2:1 display and everything else. Why? You just confuse people, especially with the naming scheme. It's in every country something else. There is a phone and it has like 5 names in 5 different regions. So it's just confusing. And that actually is already something that they are trying to mislead people about. Because, for example, when they started to release the Mate 10 it actually started. Because, for example, the P9 back then obviously was better than the P9 Lite, but you definitely saw a lot of resemblance between those phones, and it was kind of similar, just with a toned down overall experience. With the P10, that was kind of the thing, but the P10 Lite didn't look anything like the P10, but the qualities were also solid. But with the Mate 10 it started. The Mate 10 Lite had nothing to do in terms of design with the Mate 10 series, the Pro or the normal one. It had nowhere near the performance, nowhere near the battery life, nowhere near the great camera. But if you just talk to a normal consumer and you tell him, hey, this is this amazing phone for 800 euros, and you pay less than half of it for the Lite version, you get pretty much the same. And they then, and because I've seen this in so many comments, they told me, I got almost the same experience and I paid so much less. You did not get the same experience. If you would have used the Mate 10, you would have seen how much you miss, because they are not even in the same ballpark. How can the Mate 10 be a light version of the Mate 10? How can the Mate 10 Lite be a version of the Mate 10 if it doesn't have, the one has glass on the back, the one has metal, fingerprint reader location is different, completely different specs, SD card, headphone jack, so many different. There are actually way more things that they differ in than that they are similar with. So I think they are just trying to ride the train of the name. They know the Mate 10 Pro is important, it's popular, people will buy it, but people who don't wanna pay as much or can't afford it think they will be just about as good off with the Lite one. No, because the Lite models are not known anymore for their value. For example, a Mate 10 Lite was a totally decent phone, but for its price it came out, it was just too expensive. Same was the case for the P10 Lite, but that one got noticeably cheaper already early on. And then there's the P20 Lite. With a price of 350 euros, officially still in Germany, you can get so much better phones. This phone should cost about 200. 250 at best, because this is where the chipset belongs. This is where the overall qualities belong. So, future plans, I'm not quite sure if I even said it in the beginning, but I'm not gonna do any more Huawei reviews for phones, because like I said, this is where it shows just to me that I don't care about the brand still in some way. I hate their phone division, let's say it like that, because the MateBook X Pro is something that I'm super excited for, and I gave the old one a great review. So I can hate the company, but still love their products, in case you get that. And then, now to finish this whole video, and I know it was super long, and I know this will get so many crazy dislikes, because no one has watched the whole thing to get my perspective. Now, obviously this was kind of a rant, and obviously this was very subjective, and the things that annoyed me come from many different perspectives that most of you don't even care about, because why would you care about things like the marketing, or not being influenced, about the mission of a reviewer, about the fanboys, since you're maybe one of them, you're on your own. Or for example, obviously, if you tell me that you are right and I am wrong, I'm not gonna change this by saying this, even though I could explain why I think I am definitely most often right. Not saying that I always am. And the unwillingness to change. These are all things that don't maybe matter to you as a consumer. But as a reviewer, I just had to say to myself, I am not gonna support a brand anymore, and making a review is already supporting them. I'm not, even if it's a negative review, but I think if you watch just the detailed part of my reviews and don't watch the personal, subjective part, you will think this is a very good phone. And if you just watch the rating. It's just when you watch my subjective opinion where you can disagree with me, and you can disagree with my personal opinion, but you can't say it's wrong. You can say I think otherwise, I like it for this and this reason, but you can't say my opinion is wrong. No one's opinion is wrong. So, the people that I wanted to address with this video won't watch it anyways, but those people who care to know why I won't review them anymore maybe now understand why I'm so annoyed, because I simply don't want to force myself, because you have no idea of how much of a torture it was and how annoying it was for me to review those P20 series phones, because of the annoyances of the screen dimming, of a performance that is simply not worthy of a flagship at this price range. And let's just be honest, what was the reason why they took a price of 900 euros? They wanted to be compared with an iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy S9. It was not that this phone was just so much more expensive now. Because why did they offer you, for example, a Bose headset along with them? Because that's what the actual phone would cost like. You would pay like $700 for this phone, which is what it would usually be more close to like. But they give you a $200 headphone, so you think you saved money. But that's just because this is what the real price should be. But they couldn't just release it without the headphone for $700, because then you would say, no wait, if the iPhone 10 costs $1,000 and the Note 8 and the Samsung Galaxy S9 are around $1,000, why should I go for this phone that's just $700? There's something that's just not right. There's just something that has to be worse. But if you think with 900 in mind, oh yeah, now it's a $900 phone. So, in my opinion, they are more than any other brand misleading, deceiving, tricking, fooling, playing with everyone to get what they want. And obviously it works. And by me telling you all of that, it won't change a thing. It won't dip at all, because I don't think that I will get more dislikes than I will get likes for this video, but I will get more dislikes than usual from all those people who watch the review. Just at the beginning see, okay, he's hating the brand. Oh wait, I love the brand. I will dislike him. That's okay. But let me just ask you. But it makes no sense, because if I ask you, you are the rational thinking ones. Because if you are, that's the reason. Why did they subsidize the phone so heavily? There is a reason. Because their plan is, I will give him this phone quite cheap for free. So for example, the P20 Pro. I know so many people who actually bought it for around €250 on a contract, 280, 240, doesn't really matter. Now, what do they have in mind with them? Well, they tell you, or they think, I will give you the phone very cheap. You will fall in love with the brand, and then you will buy the next one. And once they have you hooked up, you will think similar to what Apple users think like and what Samsung users think like. Because I saw a very slow change, especially at my workplace, because like 3 years ago, everyone had either an iPhone or had a Galaxy phone. But people by now have seen, wait, there's competition out there. There are brands that offer me the same for less, or that offer me more for the same price. And a lot of people have switched from their super expensive phone to something cheaper. But now, back with the P20, I see so many people jumping on board again, because they get it great on contract and they kind of want to hook you up again. And we are at the same cycle. So now it's brands like Huawei who want you to kind of fall into the hands of what Apple and Samsung were there for. But those are brands that, in my opinion, do things on a more ethical way. They are more professional. They do it the way it should be right, and not the way that works best. Obviously, every company does some shady things, but we have seen so many things about Huawei, for example, paying for reviews, and I am 100% sure that not everything they do is with the best in mind for the customer. It's just for their best in mind, which is obvious something you would also do if it's your company. But you don't have to go over dead bodies, You can just deliver a great product, market it well, and maybe it works. But you can force it. And that's what they do. And I just don't tolerate that kind of behavior, because if that would have been a thing from every other brand, obviously I have to accept it. But it's extremely obvious from this brand, especially since they can't figure out issues that they have for years and years already. So now I'm done. Yeah. Okay. Let me know what you think. And like I said, you can disagree with me as much as you want to. But just think about what I said. Think about what was right and what was wrong, what you can accept and what you can't accept. But accept my opinion as it is. You can tell me wherever you think different, but you can't tell me that I'm wrong. Not if I think that is right. Bye. Nah, that didn't stop.